The glass walls of Ryan Walker's office stretched endlessly toward the Chicago skyline, 38 floors above the restless heartbeat of the Loop. From here, the city looked almost fragile, a glittering puzzle of steel glass and lights sprawled against the gray October sky. But to Ryan, this empire was no accident. It was the kingdom he had carved out of nothing, brick by brick, deal by deal, betrayal by betrayal. He leaned back in his leather chair, his fingers wrapped around a half-empty glass of bourbon, the amber liquid catching the faint reflection of the Willis Tower in the distance. To most, Ryan Walker was the man who had it all, the youngest real estate mogul to secure a billion-dollar deal before turning 33, a name splashed across Forbes and Fortune lists, a man whose company controlled half the prime real estate in Chicago. But Ryan knew better. The empire was real. The accolades were real. The respect was real. The peace was not. Every night when the last of his employees had gone home and silence filled the glass fortress, his ghosts came crawling back. He saw again the old clapboard house in Cleveland, Ohio. His father's suitcase slamming shut. His mother's shaking hands as she begged for him to stay. "Richard, don't. Please, for Ryan." The cold reply, "I've lived a lie long enough." And then the door, his father disappearing into the night, leaving a trembling boy and a mother who would never laugh the same way again. Ryan's jaw tightened as he swirled the bourbon. He had promised himself he would never be like his father. Never weak, never reckless, never chained to love, that fragile illusion that could collapse in a single night. And yet, no matter how high he climbed, the emptiness only grew heavier. On his desk lay a sleek white envelope unopened. The embossed lettering read, "The New Horizons Foundation, Annual Gala, Lincoln Park Conservatory, October 14th. Normally, Ryan avoided galas. They were facades, handshakes wrapped in silk gloves, glasses of champagne clinking, while lies were traded between smiles. But something about this one lingered. His company had donated heavily to the foundation, a shelter network supporting survivors of domestic abuse. His mother would have approved. She had spent her life teaching Ryan that women deserved safety, dignity, respect, things she herself had been denied when his father abandoned her. Ryan tapped his finger against the envelope. He should have thrown it into the trash like the rest of the invitations. But for reasons he couldn't explain, he didn't. The night of the gala arrived colder than expected. Chicago winds whipped down the streets, sharp and unrelenting, rattling the windows of the Lincoln Park Conservatory. Inside, however, warmth bloomed golden chandeliers, showering light upon guests dressed in gowns and tuxedos, the air filled with the soft notes of a string quartet. Ryan entered with the ease of a man accustomed to attention. His tuxedo was custom-tailored, his presence magnetic. Heads turned, whispers followed. Some eyes glittered with admiration, others with envy. He shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, smiled when he was expected to. But inside, he was already bored. Until he saw her. She wasn't standing in the center of the room, like the women who craved to be noticed. She was at the edges, near a table of white roses, her laughter, soft, controlled, as though she had learned to make her joy quiet. Audrey White. Her emerald dress traced elegant lines along her silhouette. Her natural curls, pinned loosely, framing a face that was striking, not for its perfection, but for its depth. Her skin was radiant under the chandelier light, but her eyes... God, her eyes were storms contained in silence. They carried shadows, sorrow and resilience in equal measure. Ryan felt something shift in his chest, sharp and unwelcome. It wasn't lust. He'd seen beauty before, countless times, in countless forms. But this was different. This woman carried secrets that pulled him toward her like gravity. He forced his gaze away, but found it drifting back again and again, until it felt less like a choice and more like fate tugging at invisible threads between them. When the speeches ended and the music swelled, Ryan crossed the floor without thinking. His steps felt foreign, as though his body moved faster than his mind could reason. Enjoying the gala, his voice was calm, casual, the mask of charm he always wore. Audrey turned, her guarded expression softening only slightly. "I suppose it's a good cause," she replied, her voice low, warm, and measured. "You're Ryan Walker," she said matter-of-factly, not with awe, not with envy, just recognition. "And you are?" he asked, though he already knew he wanted the answer to last. "Audrey White." The name sank into him like a seed. They spoke at first about the foundation, then about books, then music. But Ryan found himself listening in a way he rarely did. Her words mattered. Her laughter, fleeting and delicate, struck something inside him that had been numb for years. Then he saw it, a faint bruise half hidden beneath the sleeve of her gown. She adjusted quickly, pulling the fabric lower, but the image was burned into him. He didn't comment. Not yet. But something inside him refused to let it go. When the night ended, she smiled politely. "It was nice meeting you, Mr. Walker." "Ryan," he corrected. She hesitated, then let the smallest smile bloom. Then, "Good night, Ryan." And just like that, she slipped away into the crowd, leaving him staring after her in a ballroom that suddenly felt too bright, too loud, too suffocating. The car ride home was silent. Audrey sat with her hands folded in her lap, staring out at the city lights. Beside her, Marcus White, her husband, kept his hands clenched around the steering wheel, his jaw rigid. A respected lawyer in downtown Chicago, Marcus was admired in courtrooms and feared by opponents. But behind closed doors, he was something else entirely. "You think I didn't see you?" His voice was sharp, slicing through the silence. Audrey flinched. "Marcus, please. It was just conversation." He pulled the car over abruptly, his hand shooting out to grab her wrist, the same wrist Ryan had noticed. "Don't play games with me, Audrey. I know men like him. Rich, entitled. They think they can take whatever they want. You stay away from him. Do you hear me?" Her pulse quickened under his grip. "Yes," she whispered. He released her with a shove, muttering curses as he pulled back into traffic. Audrey pressed her trembling hands to her lap, staring down as the city blurred past. For years, she had endured his temper, his control, his rage. To the world, they were the picture-perfect couple, the successful attorney and his elegant wife. But in private, she had learned to make herself small, invisible to survive. Yet tonight, something inside her shifted. Because when Ryan Walker had looked at her, it wasn't with possession. It wasn't with judgment. It was as though he saw her. And for the first time in years, she felt alive inside that gaze. Audrey closed her eyes, hating herself for even thinking of another man. She was married. Marriage meant sacrifice, endurance, loyalty. And yet, the echo of Ryan's voice lingered in her mind like a forbidden promise. That same night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse in River North, the bourbon untouched beside him. The city glowed beneath a restless sky. But his mind was consumed with emerald green fabric, with storm-filled eyes, with a bruise on a wrist. He told himself to forget her. She was married. She was untouchable. But something inside him rebelled. He had spent his entire life building walls to keep disappointment out. But Audrey White had walked past those defenses without even trying. And Ryan realized with a heaviness that terrified him He didn't just want her beauty. He wanted to know her pain. He wanted to take it from her. He wanted to give her a life she deserved, but had never been allowed to claim. The irony stung like a wound. His father had once torn apart a marriage. Now here Ryan stood, haunted by a married woman. But this wasn't lust. This was something far more dangerous. As the clock struck midnight and rain began to fall over the city, Ryan whispered to the dark glass, "She's different. She's worth everything." Audrey lay awake in the mansion on East Lakeshore Drive, Marcus sleeping soundly beside her. She stared at the ceiling, her chest tight, her heart restless. Her hand drifted to her wrist, where the bruise still throbbed faintly, and then to her lips, remembering the way Ryan had said her name, the way it had felt like both salvation and sin. She hated herself for it. But for the first time in years, she whispered into the silence almost too softly to hear God help me. I wish I could be free. At dawn, a single envelope slid under Ryan's office door. No return address, just his name, in careful handwriting. Inside was a photograph of Audrey, smiling once years ago before the shadows, and beneath it in thick black ink, a warning scrawled, "Stay away. She's mine." Ryan Walker wasn't a man easily rattled. Competitors had tried to destroy him. Journalists had tried to scandalize him. Even old friends had tried to betray him. He had survived them all, rebuilt stronger each time. But that envelope slipped under his office door, in the dead of night, gnawed at him in a way business enemies never had. He had stared at the photograph for hours, Audrey smiling in what looked like an old family portrait, her curls loose around her shoulders, her eyes bright in a way he hadn't seen at the gala. Underneath the black scrawl, "Stay away. She's mine. Marcus White." It had to be him. The arrogance, the territorial tone, the certainty that Audrey was property and not a person. Yes, Ryan knew men like Marcus. He'd grown up watching his own father act with that same entitlement, the same selfishness. Ryan set the photo back on his desk, his hands tightening into fists. For the first time in years, he didn't know what his next move should be. The following week blurred in numbers and meetings. Ryan signed contracts, discussed expansions, shook hands, but his thoughts remained elsewhere. He found himself wondering, was she safe? Did Marcus hurt her again? Was she trapped in that mansion, pretending to smile for society while crying in silence at night? On Thursday morning, Ryan's assistant mentioned that the company had an appointment scheduled with Harbor House Shelter, one of the organizations they funded in Chicago's South Side. Normally, he would have delegated the appearance to his PR team. But when he heard the name, something in him shifted. "I'll go myself," Ryan said abruptly. His assistant blinked in surprise. "Sir?" "You heard me." Harbor House sat on a quiet street lined with weathered brick buildings. It wasn't large, just 3 floors, and a small courtyard where children played with donated toys. The laughter carried faintly raw and unpolished, a sound carved from brokenness, but still alive. The director, a kind woman with streaks of silver in her hair, greeted Ryan warmly. "We're grateful for your continued support, Mr. Walker. Would you like a tour?" Ryan followed her through narrow hallways, filled with donated clothes, shelves of canned food walls, covered with posters reading, "You are not alone." And then he saw her. Audrey. She was kneeling beside a cardboard box, folding donated blouses into neat stacks. Her hair was tied back simply, no makeup, no jewels, no emerald dress, just jeans and a blouse, the most ordinary disguise. And yet Ryan thought he had never seen her look more beautiful. Her posture stiffened when she noticed him. Her lips parted, startled, but she quickly gathered herself. "Under Mr. Walker." Ryan's chest tightened. He forced a smile. Ryan, he corrected softly. The director, oblivious, beamed. Audrey has been volunteering with us for years. She's one of our most reliable helpers. Pride flickered in the woman's tone. But when Ryan glanced back at Audrey, she dropped her gaze as though the words weighed heavy, rather than light. When the director left them briefly, silence hung in the storage room. Ryan took a careful step closer. I didn't expect to see you here. Audrey's hands kept folding clothes, though her fingers trembled slightly. I volunteer sometimes. It keeps perspective. Her voice faltered just enough for him to hear the truth beneath it. Ryan gestured toward the box. May I? She looked at him for a long second, then allowed the smallest smile. I wouldn't have guessed you knew how to fold. I'm a quick learner, he said, though the first shirt he touched looked clumsy in his large hands. Her quiet laugh slipped out despite herself, soft but real. The sound eased something in him he hadn't realized was tight. When Audrey's shift ended, Ryan offered to walk her to her car. She hesitated, then nodded. The late afternoon sun washed the streets in a golden haze, casting long shadows as they walked slowly together. Why are you here, Ryan? She asked finally, her voice not accusing, but cautious. Because I care about more than money, he answered truthfully. Then after a pause, more softly, and because I wanted to see you again. Audrey's steps faltered. She turned to him startled. You shouldn't say that. Why not? It's the truth. Because I'm married. The word fell from her lips like a weight heavy, suffocating. Ryan's jaw tightened. I know, and I'm not here to make your life harder. They walked in silence until they reached her car. Audrey turned her eyes stormy. You don't know me. Not yet, Ryan said steadily, but I'd like to. Her breath caught, and for a moment he thought she might walk away without another word. But instead she whispered, There's a coffee shop nearby, if you're not too busy. The cafe was small, tucked into a corner near Hyde Park, the kind of place where students scribbled in notebooks and professors lingered over tea. They chose a quiet corner. The hum of background chatter faded until it felt like only the two of them existed. Audrey stirred her tea, her hands trembling slightly. You seem different, she said softly, eyes searching his face. Different how most men with your power walk into a room like they own it. But you... She tilted her head, studying him carefully. You look like you're still searching. Her words struck deeper than she knew. Ryan leaned back, exhaling slowly. Maybe I am. And you think you'll find it in me? He met her gaze without flinching. I don't know. But I know that when I look at you, I don't just see beauty. I see strength. I see pain you don't deserve. And I can't stop wanting to know more. Audrey's throat tightened. She looked down quickly, blinking against tears. You shouldn't say things like that. Why? Because it makes me want to believe them, she whispered. The words hung between them. Fragile, dangerous, undeniable. When they left the cafe, the sky had darkened. A summer storm rolled in, fast, heavy rain, pouring down, before they could even reach their cars. Audrey gasped as the downpour drenched them, laughter bubbling from her chest before she could stop it. Ryan caught the sound brighter and freer than any he had heard from her yet. They ran under the nearest awning, water streaming down his suit, droplets sparkling in her curls. He looked at her, really looked, and for a moment, the world dissolved. Audrey, he murmured, his voice rough. Her lips parted. For a heartbeat, she didn't move away. Then she turned her head sharply, tears stinging her eyes. I can't. Ryan's hand dropped to his side. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. She cut in, her voice trembling. And I wanted to let you. But I can't. I'm married. Her words were final, but her eyes betrayed her, glistening with longing. She could not speak. That night, Audrey came home soaked, her dress clinging to her skin. Marcus was waiting, his whiskey glass half empty, his eyes bloodshot. "Where were you?" "At the shelter," she said evenly. In the storm, his tone sharpened. "Yes, alone." Her stomach twisted. "Yes." Marcus stepped closer, his hand shooting out to grip her chin, forcing her eyes to his. "Don't lie to me. I'll know." Audrey's pulse raced. "I'm not lying." He released her, muttering curses, but his gaze lingered hard and suspicious. She knew then he was watching her more closely now. One slip and the price would be unbearable. Ryan, meanwhile, stood at his penthouse window, rain streaking down the glass. He paced the floor, replaying the storm, her laughter, the way her eyes had nearly let him in. He hated himself for wanting her. He hated the irony of becoming the man he despised. But deep down, he knew Audrey's marriage wasn't love. It was a cage. She wasn't living. She was surviving. And Ryan whispered to the storm, "What if I could give her freedom?" The next morning, Audrey sat at the vanity in her Lakeshore Drive mansion, carefully dabbing concealer over a faint bruise Marcus had left days before. Her reflection felt like a stranger. Then, from the corner of her mirror, she noticed something out of place. A slip of paper tucked beneath a vase of roses Marcus had given her months ago. She pulled it out, her hands trembling. Her heart froze. It wasn't Marcus's handwriting. It was Ryan's. "You don't have to live like this. Not anymore." Morning sunlight slipped through the tall glass windows of the white mansion, but it brought no warmth. Audrey sat at her vanity, her hands trembling as she pressed the slip of paper closer to her chest. "You don't have to live like this. Not anymore." The words burned into her like fire. Ryan's handwriting, she knew it. But how had it found its way here, into this carefully guarded prison of marble floors and curated roses? The note was hidden, almost buried. If Marcus had found it first. Her chest tightened. Was it a lifeline or a trap? Downstairs, she heard Marcus's heavy footsteps echoing against the polished wood floors. The sound made her body tense instinctively. He entered the kitchen, his tie perfectly knotted, his smile, the kind that made judges trust him and juries believe him. "Good morning," he said smoothly, as though last night's interrogation had never happened. Audrey forced a smile. "Good morning." He poured his coffee, then glanced at her, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "You've been distracted lately." Her throat went dry. "Just tired." He sipped his coffee slowly, his gaze holding hers. "You know I notice everything." It wasn't a comment. It was a warning. Audrey lowered her eyes, swallowing the fear clawing at her chest. That afternoon, she returned to the shelter. She told Marcus she had a charity luncheon. He hadn't questioned her, not yet. Her hands shook as she pushed open the door, but the sound of children's laughter steadied her. Here, among these cracked walls, she could breathe. And then she saw him. Ryan stood near the back of the main hall, speaking with the director. When his eyes lifted and found hers, the world seemed to still. Audrey. Her name on his lips was softer than she deserved, gentler than she had known in years. She glanced nervously toward the door. "You shouldn't be here. I had to see you." Her hands tightened around the stack of folded blankets she carried. "Marcus. He's watching me. If he finds out," Ryan stepped closer, his voice low, urgent. "Then let him watch." "I don't care." "You should care," she whispered, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "He'll destroy you. Not before I take you out of this." Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him, wanted to step into the warmth of his certainty. but fear clung tighter than hope. Later they met in the storage room, the only corner the cameras didn't cover. The air between them hummed with the weight of unspoken things. Ryan's hand brushed against hers as he took the box she carried. She flinched, not from him, but from the memory of Marcus's grip. "Did he hurt you again?" Ryan asked quietly, his eyes searching her face. Audrey looked away. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." Her throat constricted. "You don't understand. He's not just a husband. He's a lawyer. He has connections. Judges, police officers, people who owe him favors." If I tried to leave, Ryan interrupted, fierce determination sharpening his voice. "Then we'll find another way. Audrey, listen to me. You're stronger than you think, and you're not alone anymore." Her eyes filled tears, spilling silently. For years, she had learned to swallow her pain, to make herself invisible. But now, standing in front of him, she felt seen in a way that both terrified and healed her. Before she could stop herself, she whispered, "Why me?" Ryan's chest rose sharply. "Because you're the first person in years who made me believe love might not be a lie." Audrey's breath trembled. She should have walked away. She should have said no. Instead, she closed her eyes and let the silence answer for her. That night, Marcus returned home later than usual, the smell of whiskey heavy on him. Audrey was sitting on the sofa pretending to read. "Where were you today?" he asked suddenly, his tone too casual. "At the luncheon," she said evenly. "Really?" His smile twisted. "Funny, because a friend of mine saw you near Hyde Park." Her fingers froze around the book. Marcus leaned closer, his voice a dangerous whisper. "You think I don't see it? The glow in your face, the way you've been different, happier." Audrey's pulse thundered. "Who is he?" "There's no one. Marcus." The slap came swift, cruel, sending her head snapping to the side. She didn't cry out. Tears only fed his fury. "You're mine," he hissed, his breath reeking of liquor. "Don't ever forget it." When he stalked upstairs, Audrey pressed her trembling hands to her face, Ryan's words echoing in her mind. "You're not alone anymore." Meanwhile, Ryan paced his penthouse, unable to rest. He had seen the fear in Audrey's eyes, the way she flinched at the slightest movement. Every instinct screamed to take her away, to fight Marcus head-on. But he knew it wasn't that simple. Marcus had power, influence. One wrong move, and Ryan could lose everything: his company, his reputation, and worst of all, the fragile trust Audrey had given him. But he couldn't do nothing. He picked up his phone, dialing a number he hadn't called in years. "It's Ryan Walker," he said when the line connected. "I need someone who can dig into a man named Marcus White. Everything. His cases, his debts, his enemies. I want leverage." Days passed heavy with tension. Audrey tried to keep her composure in public, but inside her heart battled between fear and longing. Each stolen glance with Ryan, each quiet moment at the shelter, deepened the ache of what she couldn't have. One afternoon, as she helped a child zip up a donated coat, she caught Ryan watching her from across the room. His expression wasn't lust, wasn't possession. It was admiration. And something in her cracked. Later, when they found a moment alone, she whispered, "If I believed you, if I believed I could be free." "What then?" Ryan's answer was simple, steady. "Then I'd spend every day proving you were right to choose me." Audrey's heart twisted painfully. It wanted him so badly, it scared her. That evening, back at the mansion, Marcus's paranoia grew. He watched her every move, his questions sharper, his patience thinner. When Audrey excused herself to take a bath, she locked the door and let the water run until the room filled with steam. Only then did she pull out the note Ryan had written, hidden carefully in a cosmetics box. Her hands traced the words again and again. "You don't have to live like this," she whispered to her reflection in the fogged mirror. "Maybe I don't." 2 nights later, Ryan received a call from the investigator he had hired. "I found something," the man said grimly. "Marcus White has enemies. Big ones. He's been covering up dirty cases for some very dangerous people." Ryan's grip tightened on the phone. "Go on. He's not just abusive, Ryan. He's dirty. And if what I found is true, staying married to him might put Audrey in more danger than leaving ever could." Ryan's blood ran cold, because suddenly this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about survival. Chicago nights had their own rhythm, sirens in the distance, wind clawing through steel and glass, the hum of trains cutting across the dark. Ryan Walker stood at his penthouse window, watching headlights snake along Lakeshore Drive. But the city, vast and alive, barely registered. The investigator's words still rang in his ears. Marcus White isn't just an abusive husband. He's a man with blood on his hands and enemies who would do anything to bury him. Ryan clenched his jaw. The thought of Audrey bound to that man, forced to share a home, a life, a name with him, ignited a fury he hadn't known he carried. This wasn't just about love anymore. This was about saving her life. And yet saving her meant pulling her into his world, exposing her to risks that stretched beyond bruises and whispered threats. He wasn't sure which fate was crueler, the cage Marcus had built, or the fire that would come if they fought to break it. Audrey, meanwhile, sat at the edge of her bed in the mansion on East Lakeshore Drive. Marcus had left earlier for a meeting, though she had long stopped believing the word meant business. The silence in the house was suffocating, pressing down on her chest, reminding her of every locked door and every watchful glance. She held Ryan's note in her hand, her fingers tracing the words until they blurred. "You don't have to live like this," she whispered into the darkness. "But how?" Her reflection in the mirror across the room was pale shadowed, a ghost of the woman she once dreamed of being. She thought of the girl who used to write poetry, who wanted to travel, who once believed love was a refuge. That girl had vanished the day she married Marcus. And yet when Ryan looked at her, she felt that girl stirring again, fragile but alive. Their next meeting was not planned. Audrey was shelving books in the shelter's small library when she heard footsteps. She turned, expecting one of the staff, but froze when she saw him. "Ryan." Her breath caught. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to be," he said quietly. The intensity in his eyes made her look away. "Marcus. He suspects something. He watches me constantly. If he ever—" "I know," Ryan interrupted softly. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "That's why I can't stay away. I need you to trust me, Audrey. Marcus isn't just dangerous to you. He's dangerous to everyone around him. I've seen proof." Her heart thudded. What kind of proof? Ryan hesitated. If he told her everything about the corruption, the enemies, it might only frighten her more. But he couldn't lie. "Let's just say he's involved with people who would rather silence anyone who gets too close." Audrey's face drained of color. Her fingers gripped the edge of the bookshelf until her knuckles whitened. "So if I leave him, they'll try to use you against him. Or worse." Her chest rose sharply, panic pressing in. "Then I'm trapped either way." "No," Ryan said firmly. He reached for her hand, his touch steady and warm. "Not if you're with me. I can protect you." Her tears brimmed. "You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do. Audrey, I won't walk away. Not from you." She stared at him, trembling, torn between fear and the dangerous hope that threatened to consume her. And in that small library with dust motes floating in the sunlight, She made the smallest, most fragile choice. She let him hold her hand. Later that evening, Ryan sat with her at a quiet cafe near the University of Chicago. They chose a corner table where the dim lighting softened their faces into shadows. Audrey stirred her tea, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you ever wonder if love is worth all this?" Ryan studied her. "Every day. And I still choose it. I'd choose it 1,000 times, if it meant you." Her lips trembled. "You make it sound so simple." "It is," he said gently. "It's everything else that complicates it." For the first time, Audrey allowed herself to smile without restraint. It was faint, fragile, but real, and Ryan thought it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. But beauty never lasted long in her world. When Audrey returned home that night, Marcus was waiting in the living room, the lamps dimmed, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "You're late," he said casually, too casually. "I stopped at the store." Her voice was calm, rehearsed. His eyes narrowed. "Which store?" She swallowed. "The market on Michigan Avenue." "Funny." He swirled his glass. "Because someone told me they saw you on the south side this afternoon, near a shelter." Her blood ran cold. Marcus stood, his smile sharp as glass. "Are you hiding something from me, Audrey?" Her pulse raced. "No. Liar." His hand lashed out, gripping her wrist hard enough to make her wince. "Don't forget you're mine. If I catch you in a lie again, I'll make you regret it." When he finally shoved her away, Audrey stumbled, clutching her wrist. She held back tears, not because she wasn't in pain, but because she refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. That night she cried silently into her pillow, Ryan's words circling in her mind like a lifeline. "I won't walk away." Ryan knew Marcus was circling closer. His investigators' reports piled higher each day. Illegal dealings buried cases, names of men who would kill to keep Marcus silent. But Ryan didn't care about the details anymore. He cared about Audrey. He began sending her messages in hidden ways. A note slipped into her volunteer folder, a flower left at the shelter with no card, a book with a single line underlined. "You are not alone." Each gesture was small, but to Audrey, they were sparks in the dark, reminders that someone in the world cared enough to fight for her. And slowly, despite the danger, she began to believe. One night, unable to bear the distance, Ryan called her. "Come with me," he said, his voice low, urgent. "Just tonight. Don't think. Don't be afraid. Ryan." Her voice broke. "If Marcus finds out, he already suspects. Hiding won't change that. But you don't have to suffer another night. Not when I'm here." Silence stretched, then a whisper. "I'm so scared." "I know," Ryan said, his throat tight. "But you won't be alone. Not ever again." She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Where would we go?" "Anywhere you want," he said. "Just say the word." Audrey didn't go that night. But the seed was planted. The idea of freedom, once impossible, now burned inside her like a secret flame. She began packing small things, an old notebook, a blouse, the necklace her mother had given her before she died. She hid them in a drawer Marcus never checked. Every night she whispered to herself, "One day, soon." Marcus's suspicions grew into certainty. Late one night, while Audrey slept, he slipped into her study and rifled through her desk. His fingers paused when he found a folded note tucked behind some papers. Ryan's handwriting. "You are not alone." Marcus's smile was cold, triumphant. "So it's him," he muttered. The next morning, Marcus kissed Audrey's cheek as though nothing had changed, his hands gentle, his voice smooth. But in his mind, a trap was already forming, and Ryan Walker had just stepped into his crosshairs. Morning light painted the city in gold, But inside the white mansion, a colder color lingered. Marcus poured his coffee, slowly humming under his breath, his expression unreadable. Audrey watched him from across the kitchen island, her stomach twisting. Something was different. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't accused her. He hadn't even asked about her schedule. Instead, he moved with deliberate calm, the kind that felt more dangerous than his rage. He smiled suddenly, lifting his cup. "Dinner tonight. Just the two of us. I've already made reservations at the peninsula." Audrey blinked. "Oh, that's unexpected." Marcus's eyes glinted. "You've seemed tense lately. I thought we could use a night to remind ourselves of who we are." Her heart pounded. The words sounded tender, but her instincts screamed trap. Still, she nodded. "Of course." Across town, Ryan sat in his office, his tie undone, his desk littered with papers that weren't contracts, but dossiers. His investigator had been feeding him files, photos of Marcus with men linked to organized crime, records of payments, sealed court documents that hinted at corruption. But every page he flipped only added fuel to the fire inside him. He had power. He had money. He had evidence. Yet none of it mattered if Audrey was still trapped inside that house. The memory of her hand trembling in his, the way her eyes shimmered with unspoken pleas, it haunted him. And now, with Marcus circling, Ryan knew time was running out. At the peninsula, the restaurant's chandeliers glittered above tables draped in linen. Waiters moved with polished grace, and soft piano music threaded through the air. To strangers, Audrey and Marcus looked perfect, the accomplished lawyer and his elegant wife sipping wine in harmony. But beneath the table, Audrey's hands clenched into fists, nails pressing crescents into her palms. Marcus lifted his glass. "To us." She forced a smile, raising her own. "To us." He leaned in, his voice low, intimate. "Do you know what I love most about you?" She froze. "What?" His smile widened. "That you're predictable. Loyal, even when you think you're not." The wine turned to ash in her mouth. He knew. Later that night, Audrey stood by her bedroom window, staring at the city lights. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass, her body trembling. She could feel Marcus watching her from the bed, his presence heavy in the dark. Her phone buzzed faintly on the nightstand. She glanced at it, her heart lurching when she saw the name. Ryan. She slipped into the bathroom, locking the door before answering. "Are you safe?" His voice was taut, urgent. Audrey swallowed hard. "I don't know. He's calmer. Too calm." "That's worse," Ryan muttered. "It means he's planning something." "I can feel it," she whispered. "Ryan, what if he knows?" Silence stretched on the line. When Ryan spoke again, his voice was steady but fierce. "Then we don't wait anymore. Audrey, let me take you out of there. Tonight." Her throat tightened. God, she wanted to say yes. She wanted to run, to never look back, to fall into his arms and finally breathe. But fear wrapped around her like chains. "If I leave now, he'll destroy you. He'll destroy us both." Ryan's breath caught. "Then let him try. I won't lose you." Tears filled her eyes. "Ryan." The sound of Marcus shifting in the bedroom made her freeze. She ended the call quickly, her chest heaving. She couldn't afford to be caught, not now. The following days blurred into a quiet nightmare. Marcus played the role of doting husband, flowers on the counter, gentle touches on her arm, compliments whispered in public. But Audrey felt the edge beneath it all. The way his eyes lingered too long, the way he locked his phone with new codes, the way he smiled when she asked nothing at all. He was waiting, watching. and she felt the noose tightening. Meanwhile, Ryan's resolve hardened. He began moving pieces in silence, setting up a safe apartment on the west side, under another name, securing legal counsel, who specialized in domestic abuse cases, arranging private security. Every plan was a risk, but the greater risk was doing nothing. At night, he lay awake, imagining her trapped in that mansion, and his chest ached with helplessness. One evening, unable to bear it, he drove past the White residence. From the car, he saw the silhouette of Audrey in the window. She stood motionless, staring out, and for a moment, it felt as though her gaze reached him across the distance. His hand gripped the steering wheel. "Hold on," he whispered. "I'm coming for you." Their next meeting happened by chance, or perhaps fate. Audrey slipped into the shelter one afternoon carrying a box of donated clothes. Ryan was there speaking with the director. When their eyes met, her breath caught. She moved quickly to the storage room, and moments later, Ryan followed. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "I had to." He stepped closer, his voice raw. "Audrey, you're fading. I can see it. Tell me what he's doing." Her lips trembled. She shook her head. "If I speak it aloud, it becomes real." Ryan reached out his hand, brushing her cheek. She flinched, then stilled, leaning ever so slightly into his touch. "You don't deserve this pain," he whispered. "Let me carry it." Her tears spilled silently. "I'm so afraid." "Then let me be afraid with you," Ryan said. "You don't have to do this alone." The words broke something inside her. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his chest. His arms wrapped around her, strong and steady, and for the first time in years, she felt safe. That night, she wrote in her hidden notebook a habit she hadn't dared in years. He says, "I don't deserve this pain." He says he won't walk away. And for the first time, I want to believe him more than I want to breathe. Marcus, meanwhile, made his own plans. He sat in his office late into the night, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes," he murmured. "Walker. I want everything on him. His business, his people, his weaknesses. I want him exposed." He poured himself another drink, smiling thinly. "And when I'm finished, I'll take back everything he thinks he's stolen." His eyes flicked to a photograph on his desk, Audrey framed in silver. He traced her face with his finger. "She'll learn where she belongs." Days later, Ryan received a call that shifted everything. "Mr. Walker," his lawyer said, voice urgent. "I don't know how, but Marcus White has filed for an injunction against you. Claims you've been harassing his wife, attempting to interfere with their marriage. The paperwork is already moving through the court." Ryan's blood ran cold. It was a trap. Marcus had turned the law into a weapon. And if Ryan wasn't careful, Audrey could be dragged into the center of it. That night, as Audrey returned from the shelter, she found Marcus waiting in the foyer. His smile was calm, almost kind. "Did you have a good afternoon?" he asked smoothly. She nodded, her throat tight. "Yes. Good." He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Because tomorrow, you and I will be attending a hearing downtown. I filed something important." Her stomach dropped. "What kind of hearing?" Marcus's smile widened. "The kind where I prove to the world that my wife belongs to me and that Ryan Walker will regret ever touching what's mine." Audrey's heart stopped. The trap had been sprung. The courthouse loomed like a fortress of stone and glass, the autumn sky heavy above it. Audrey White adjusted the sleeve of her blazer, her pulse hammering as she followed Marcus through the front steps. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust forward. Marcus raised a hand, his smile sharp and controlled every inch the polished attorney. "No comment today," he told the press with ease, his arm sliding around Audrey's waist, like a chain disguised as affection. Audrey forced herself not to flinch. Inside the marble floors echoed with footsteps, the air thick with tension. Ryan was already there, flanked by his lawyer, his expression calm but his jaw tight. When his eyes found hers, something flickered between them, an invisible tether, fragile and forbidden, but stronger than fear. The hearing was short, brutal. Marcus's attorney, a man with a voice like polished steel, painted Ryan as a wealthy predator, a billionaire so used to taking what he wanted that he had pursued another man's wife without shame. "Mr. White has endured months of harassment," the attorney declared, his gaze slicing toward Ryan. "Late-night calls, unwanted appearances, manipulation, under the guise of philanthropy. And Mrs. White, pressured and intimidated, has been dragged into a scandal not of her making." Audrey's stomach twisted. Every word was a lie, but spoken with such confidence that even she felt trapped inside it. Ryan's lawyer countered with precision, emphasizing his company's role in supporting women's shelters, his impeccable public record, his respect for boundaries. But every point felt fragile against the weight of Marcus's calculated narrative. When Audrey was called to the stand, the world seemed to narrow. "Mrs. White." Marcus's attorney began smoothly. "Do you feel your marriage has been interfered with by Mr. Walker?" Her hands shook as she clasped them in her lap. She glanced at Marcus, his eyes cold warning, and then at Ryan. His gaze was steady, filled not with demand, but with quiet strength. "Tell the truth," it seemed to say, "even if it breaks me." Audrey swallowed hard. Her voice caught trapped between two cages, the fear of Marcus and the hope of Ryan. Finally, she whispered, "I don't want to answer that question." The courtroom murmured. Marcus's smile was razor thin. When the hearing adjourned, Marcus placed a hand at the small of her back, steering her out like a possession. "Well done," he murmured, his voice low enough only she could hear. "You remembered where your loyalty lies." Audrey's nails bit into her palms. Her silence had protected Ryan for now, but it had also chained her more tightly to Marcus. Ryan watched them leave, his chest heavy. He had seen the war in her eyes, the pain of a woman torn apart, and he knew Marcus wasn't finished. That evening, Ryan stood in his office, staring out at the skyline. His lawyer had warned him, "Marcus is playing a long game. He wants to ruin you publicly, make you untouchable. If you push too hard, you'll drag Audrey down with you." Ryan's fist slammed against the glass. He didn't care about his empire. He cared about the woman suffocating in a gilded cage. But how could he save her without destroying her in the process? Audrey, back at the mansion, sat in the darkened library, her body trembling. Marcus had gone out again, leaving behind silence and shadows. She pulled her hidden notebook from its drawer, her pen scratching across the page. "Today I sat between lies and truth, and I chose silence. I betrayed myself. I betrayed him. But if I spoke, Marcus would have destroyed us both. How much longer can I endure this?" Tears blurred the ink. She closed the book, pressing it against her chest, whispering Ryan's name, as though it were both a sin and a prayer. 2 nights later, Ryan found her again. It was in the shelter's garden, where lanterns hung from low branches, and the autumn air smelled faintly of fallen leaves. Audrey stood by the fence, her shoulders tense, her breath clouding in the chill. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered as he approached. "I had to see you," Ryan replied softly. She turned, her eyes glistening. "You saw what happened in court." "I couldn't." "I know," he said gently. "I don't blame you." Her lips trembled. But I feel like I betrayed you. Ryan stepped closer, his voice rough. You could never betray me. Not you. Her tears spilled, then silent and hot, and when Ryan reached for her, she didn't resist. His arms closed around her strong and unyielding, and she pressed her face against his chest, letting the walls she had built collapse. For a long time they stood there in silence, two souls clinging to each other, in a world intent on tearing them apart. Later, as they sat on a bench beneath the lanterns, Audrey whispered, "What if he never lets me go, then I'll make him." Ryan said simply. She shook her head. "You don't understand. He has power. Friends in high places. He'll use the law, the media, anything. He'll make sure the world hates you." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Let them. I'd rather be hated for loving you than admired for standing by while you suffer." Audrey stared at him, her heart aching with both fear and fierce, impossible love. She wanted to kiss him to forget the world, but she knew their moment was fragile, stolen. Still, she whispered, "Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't walk away." Ryan's hand found hers, his grip steady. "I swear, Audrey. Not in this lifetime." But promises couldn't keep Marcus away. That night, Ryan returned to his penthouse only to find his investigator waiting, pale and tense. "You need to know something," the man said grimly. "Marcus isn't just leaning on judges. He has friends in the police department, and he's been feeding them information about you." Ryan stilled. "What kind of information?" The investigator hesitated. The kind that could lead to an arrest. False evidence, maybe, but convincing enough to stick. Ryan's chest burned. Marcus wasn't just playing dirty, he was trying to destroy him completely. Meanwhile, Audrey sensed the storm closing in. Marcus's eyes lingered on her longer, his touch heavier, his voice sharper when they were alone. She felt him tightening his grip, as though he were preparing for something final. And she knew, if she didn't act soon, she might never escape. Late one evening, Audrey slipped into the library to check her hidden notebook. She froze when she saw it lying open on the desk. Her heart stopped. Marcus sat in the armchair, the notebook in his hands, his smile slow and lethal. "So," he said softly, turning a page. "Ryan Walker." Audrey's blood turned to ice. Marcus closed the notebook with a snap, his eyes glinting with triumph. "You've given me everything I need, Audrey, and tomorrow the whole world will know exactly who you really belong to." The mansion's library was silent, except for the slow sound of pages turning. Marcus leaned back in the armchair, Audrey's hidden notebook resting on his lap, his fingers tracing the words as though savoring every confession. Audrey stood frozen near the doorway, her breath caught in her chest. The air between them felt thick, suffocating, as though the walls themselves had tightened around her. Marcus looked up, his smile sharp, predatory. "So this is what you've been doing in your quiet hours. Writing about him, about Walker." Audrey's hands trembled. "Give that back." "Why?" Marcus asked softly, snapping the notebook shut. "It's mine now, just like you." Her voice cracked. Those words were never meant for anyone else. And yet Marcus murmured, standing his height, casting a shadow across her. "They'll be very useful. Do you know what people see when a billionaire seduces another man's wife? Scandal. But when the wife herself writes down every forbidden thought, every guilty whisper, that's proof." Audrey's chest constricted, tears burning her eyes. Marcus leaned closer, his lips brushing her ear. "Tomorrow I'll make sure the city knows exactly what kind of woman you are." Across the city, Ryan Walker couldn't sleep. He paced the length of his penthouse. His tie discarded his glass untouched. Every muscle in his body hummed with frustration. He had built an empire by controlling variables, predicting outcomes, staying 3 steps ahead. But this war with Marcus was chaos, and Audrey was at the center of it. He could still feel her trembling against him, in the shelter's garden, hear her whisper, "Promise me you won't walk away." The memory fueled him, steadied him, but the call from his investigator earlier that evening replayed in his mind. Marcus has something. I don't know what yet, but he's preparing to use it. Be ready. Ryan clenched his jaw. Whatever he has, he won't win. I won't let him. The next morning, Audrey woke to the sound of Marcus's voice in the foyer. Yes, send it to every outlet. Tribune, Sun-Times, even the evening broadcast. He paused, his tone smooth, confident. Oh, don't worry. I have all the evidence I need. By tonight, Ryan Walker will be finished. Audrey's blood ran cold. She stepped back from the stairs, her hand gripping the banister. It was the notebook. He was going to use her words against them. Her heart raced. She needed to warn Ryan. She found a moment of escape later that day. At the shelter, she slipped into the storage room and dialed his number with shaking hands. He answered immediately. Audrey, her voice broke. He found it. The notebook. He's sending it to the press by tonight. Ryan's breath hissed through the line. Damn it. Audrey, listen to me. This isn't your fault. Tears slid down her cheeks. They'll think I betrayed you. They'll think what he wants them to think, Ryan said fiercely. But I know the truth, and I'll fight it. I'll fight him. Her chest ached with a mix of fear and fierce love. Ryan, he softened. Stay strong, just a little longer. We'll get through this, together. That evening, the headlines broke. Billionaire Ryan Walker exposed in affair scandal, wife of respected attorney, rights of forbidden love. Secret journal reveals intimate confessions. Audrey's words, ripped from her private notebook, were splashed across every platform, twisted to suit Marcus's narrative. Passages about fear, about longing, about Ryan's touch, quoted without context, painted as proof of an affair that destroyed a marriage. Ryan's board members called in panic. Investors threatened to pull out. His phone buzzed relentlessly, with journalists demanding comment. But none of it mattered, compared to the thought of Audrey trapped in that house, forced to watch her private pain turned into public spectacle. Audrey sat on the edge of her bed, the TV flashing headlines she couldn't bear to watch. Marcus entered the room, his expression smug. You see, he said softly, almost tenderly. Now the world knows. Walker is a fraud. And you. He touched her chin, forcing her to look at him. You're nothing more than a cautionary tale. Audrey's tears spilled over, but beneath the anguish something sparked anger. She pulled her face away, her voice trembling but firm. You can twist my words, Marcus, but you'll never own them. And you'll never own me. For the first time, Marcus's smile faltered. That night, Ryan called her again. His voice was hoarse, exhausted. Audrey, I need to see you. It's too dangerous, she whispered. I don't care. Just one night, please. Her heart ached. She wanted nothing more. Where? There's a safe apartment on the west side. Tomorrow. I'll send someone I trust to bring you. Say yes. Audrey closed her eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Finally, she whispered, yes. The next day, Audrey packed a small bag, just essentials. Nothing Marcus would notice missing. She hid it under the bed, her chest pounding with both terror and hope. But Marcus was watching, always watching. That evening he poured them both glasses of wine, his smile slow. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass. Audrey hesitated. "What do you mean?" His eyes glinted. "You'll see." The following morning, as Ryan waited in the safe apartment, the door opened, not with the soft knock he expected, but with the crash of force. Police officers stormed inside, weapons drawn. Ryan Walker, 1, barked, "You're under arrest." Ryan froze, fury and disbelief colliding, and as they cuffed his wrists, his only thought was of Audrey. Was she safe, or had Marcus finally caged them both? The cell was cold, the walls bare, and yet Ryan Walker stood tall. His wrists still bore the faint marks from the handcuffs, but his eyes, though shadowed by exhaustion, held steady fire. Marcus thought he had won, thought the world would believe the lies. He spun the doctored files, the twisted words. But Ryan knew something Marcus had forgotten. Truth had a way of bleeding through, no matter how deep it was buried. At the mansion, Audrey paced the length of her bedroom, her bag still hidden beneath the bed. The news channels screamed Ryan's name, flashing images of him being led away in handcuffs. Marcus entered with a smirk. "Your lover won't be troubling us anymore." Audrey froze, her heart pounding. Marcus poured himself a drink, swirling the amber liquid lazily. "The police have everything they need. Documents, witnesses, even your little diary. Walker will spend years clawing his way back, if he ever does." Audrey's voice trembled, but her eyes hardened. "And what about me?" Marcus looked at her over the rim of his glass. You'll stay exactly where you belong." Something inside Audrey snapped. For years she had bent, endured, swallowed her truth until it threatened to choke her. But now Marcus had gone too far. She would not let him win. The next day, Audrey walked into the police precinct. Her hands shook, but her chin lifted with quiet defiance. "I need to speak to the detective in charge of Ryan Walker's case." The officer raised a brow. "And you are Audrey White, his alleged victim." The interrogation room smelled faintly of coffee and dust. Ryan sat across from two detectives, his lawyer by his side. Files were stacked on the table, Marcus's evidence. One detective leaned forward. "Mr. Walker, according to these documents, you pursued Mrs. White despite her rejections. You used your company to manipulate her volunteer work, and you attempted to lure her away from her husband. Care to explain?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "Those documents are fabrications. Marcus White forged them." "Strong accusation," the detective replied coolly. Before Ryan could answer, the door opened. Audrey stepped inside. Ryan's heart stuttered at the sight of her, frail, yet unbroken, her eyes gleaming with something he hadn't seen in years. Courage. "I need to speak," she said firmly. For an hour, Audrey poured out her truth. She spoke of the bruises, the threats, the way Marcus controlled every part of her life. She described nights of silence, mornings of fear, the suffocating cage of her marriage. She explained the notebook, how it was her only refuge, never meant for anyone's eyes. How Marcus had stolen it, twisted it, weaponized it. And then, with trembling hands, she produced her proof photographs she had secretly taken of her injuries, dated and time-stamped. Messages from the shelter staff, who had noticed her fear. Testimonies from women Marcus had once represented, but quietly silenced. The room fell still. Ryan reached for her hand, across the table, his eyes burning with pride and pain. She didn't pull away. The detectives exchanged looks. One leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Mrs. White, do you realize the risk you're taking by saying this on record?" Audrey's voice was steady. "The greater risk is staying silent." That evening, the story broke again, this time with a different headline. Attorney Marcus White, accused of domestic abuse and corruption. Exclusive wife of prominent lawyer, speaks out billionaire Ryan Walker. Cleared amid shocking revelations, Chicago buzzed with scandal. The man once respected in courtrooms now found his reputation crumbling under the weight of truth. Marcus, however, was not finished. As news cameras swarmed outside his home, he paced his office, fury blazing. She thinks she can humiliate me, destroy everything I built. His hand slammed against the desk, rattling the glass. He dialed a number, his voice low and dangerous. I want her silenced. I don't care how. Make it clean. But Marcus had underestimated just how much the world had already shifted. The same men he had once called allies were turning against him, unwilling to burn for his sins. And slowly, his empire began to rot. Meanwhile, Ryan and Audrey found themselves together again, but not in secret. They sat on the balcony of the safe apartment Ryan had prepared, the city lights stretching wide below them. Audrey leaned against him, her body still trembling with the weight of everything she had revealed, but her spirit, fragile though it was, had begun to rise. I never thought I could do it, she whispered. Ryan pressed a kiss to her hair. You were braver than anyone I've ever known. Tears glistened in her eyes. He'll come after me. He won't stop. Then he'll have to go through me first, Ryan said, his voice fierce. And this time, he won't win. Days later, Marcus was arrested on charges of evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, and abuse. The courtroom where he once commanded respect now echoed with the sound of his own downfall. Audrey sat beside Ryan during the trial, her hand clasped tightly in his. She testified again, her voice trembling at first, but growing stronger with each word. Other women stepped forward too, their stories weaving together into an unbreakable chain. The verdict came swift. Marcus White was guilty. For the first time in years, Audrey breathed freely. But the final blow was one Marcus hadn't expected. Ryan's investigator uncovered that Marcus had been funneling illegal funds through his law firm, laundering money for criminal networks. The evidence was turned over to federal authorities, and within days, Marcus not only lost his license, but faced federal charges that would keep him behind bars for decades. The man who once thought himself untouchable was now shackled in chains, the echo of his arrogance silenced at last. As the gavel fell and the courtroom emptied, Ryan turned to Audrey. It's over. She shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. No, it's only beginning. My beginning. He cupped her face gently, his forehead resting against hers. Then let's begin it together. And for the first time, Audrey smiled without fear. That evening, as they walked hand in hand along the quiet stretch of the Chicago River, the city lights shimmering like stars on the water, Audrey leaned into him. I used to think freedom was impossible, she whispered. But now I know. It was always waiting for me. I just needed the courage to reach for it. Ryan kissed her softly, tenderly, a promise more than passion. And you'll never have to face it alone again. For the first time in years, Audrey felt alive, not surviving, but truly living. And as the night air wrapped around them, she knew the cage was behind her forever.